This is a Soaak podcast.
Welcome to the Science of Sound, where cutting-edge research meets real-world application. Hosted by Aaron Fournier, this podcast explores the fascinating intersection of sound, frequencies, and human performance. From the science behind bioharmonic resonance to the future of sound-based wellness, we break down the data, the discoveries, and the impact sound has on your mind and body. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of The Science of Sound. Today's going to be a little bit different.
Yep.
I have Christian Fowler in the studio with me, and we're going to talk about some different studies. So before we sat down, we looked at 4 different studies that we wanted to talk about today that relate to both mindset, but then also acoustics and sound and the effects really that sound has on our body.
100%.
And some of the, some science that's been around for a little bit, but also some breaking
Very
science,
recent,
3 months
yeah.
old, right? And so let's dive in. The first one is called The Cellular Response of Cancer to Music. This is from 2023 in the Journal of Medical Records. And essentially what happened here is scientists played 2 different types of music. They played Turkish classical music and then Western classical music. And they played those to cancer cells in a dish. This is in a controlled environment, not in the body, but in a dish, and did that for two sessions, 40 minutes each with an hour break in between. So it's kind of the basics of what happened in this study. And then
It's crazy.
what'd they find?
It's amazing. So they found that when they played this classical music, whether it was Turkish ney music or Western classical, like we know it, Beethoven, Mozart, they actually found that the cancer cells responded in a pretty profound way. And I know that the advent of science coming along and legitifying some of the music changing our cells is more recent. We've been talking about it, I think, in pop culture and stuff for a long time. So seeing this study come along where they actually play this classical music to cells and see a measurable response over and over, and in different types of cancer
And
cells.
not just measurable, but significant as well. Right, yeah.
Significant. Yeah, across we'll get into it, but across what happened in the cells with their growth being slowed down, these cancer cells, and then also just completely dying or almost committing like cell suicide, as it's called. Not a fun term, but
apoptosis.
Apoptosis. That's right.
Which brings up, so that is kind of the key to this study. And again, this is 2023, so this is pretty recent.
Yeah, absolutely.
But cool that we're seeing this research come through. And so you mentioned 2 major things that happen to the cancer cells. The first one is that this type of music stopped the spread, essentially.
Yeah,
right,
inhibited growth.
Inhibited growth. So when you think about like metastatic cancers that are spreading,
Absolutely.
right? If you can prevent that and keep it controlled, contained to 100%. One area, that's
almost
kind of
starving that growth.
One part of the battle,
Absolutely.
right? Is just like, okay, we've identified it, now let's stop the spread. Like 100%. don't let it move.
Yeah.
And then so that's something that
it's remarkable. It's crazy.
This music
and really good news. I mean, just playing classical music to your cells stops cancer growth. What did Beethoven, what did Mozart know about sound that like we are just figuring out? And that was hundreds of years ago.
Right.
And they're doing things with the melody that our cells respond to.
Right.
It's fascinating. But yeah, like you were saying, that's just one part of it.
Even the way that they tune their music, because this is something
Absolutely.
that's changed over time as well. I don't know. I'm sure you've read into that a little bit. That,
100%.
The way that we tune our music and what's the standard of A, has kind of like changed over time. But yeah, so we're seeing that classical music is proven now to
it's amazing hundreds of years later
to prevent the spread of cancer cells, and then also programmatically kind of it tells what it does is essentially in this study it was telling the cell that it's time to die off. It's something that all cells
it's
do,
like it
right?
gives it a detonate button.
There is a program within our cells which is okay, it's time, the cell has completed what it's supposed to do, now it's time to die off. The problem with cancer cells is that they typically
They're
don't
so
do
aggressive,
that, right?
Right. They want to keep proliferating.
What this is doing, I think the really profound thing is that it's telling cancer cells, okay,
100%.
like you aren't supposed to be here, time to go away.
It's amazing. So they stop the activity, they inhibit cell growth. And so at that point, even an aggressive cancer cell is learning, I can't continue to proliferate, I can't continue to reproduce. And then at that point, that programmable cell death that gets figured in with, the other effect they saw in this study, it's like, all right, you stopped, now completely stop. Don't replicate, die off. And it's like it's reprogramming a cancer cell, which are known historically to be so aggressive. They have their own life. They kind of follow different rules than most healthy cell tissue, healthy cells in the body do. So yeah, it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. I think it's a super exciting study. Obviously, there are some limitations that come with this. This was done in a clinical environment, in a petri dish. This wasn't done in a human or even, in an animal experiment.
Which hopefully we'll follow, and you'll see a part 2 episode of this when that gets published. But
that would be amazing.
Absolutely.
But I mean, really what they were calling for here is future research should explore how music-induced mechanical forces translate into molecular changes kind of at the cellular level.
100%.
Which tee up something that'll come in a little bit. But
can I ping pong off this for a second? So the changing of the tuning standard that you talked about, I think was in the 1940s. And up until then, it was kind of universally accepted that the tuning standard for A was 432 hertz. Right. And even in cymatics, if you don't know what that is, it's when you play a vibration to water or to salt on a flat plate, and it takes on geometric shapes. Yep. The difference between the geometric shape of 432 that A was and 440 that it now is one is crystal clear, almost beautiful. It evokes like a flower kind of feeling.
Oh yeah.
And the other looks muddied and muddled, and that became the new standard in 1940. Very big historical figure kind of was behind that change. I'm sure you can guess too, World War II. So you probably know who that is. And when that changed, the music, the way we listen to music with frequency changed a lot. So with this classical music, you're hearing something beautiful that your mind can really get behind. Your decisive faculties can, listen to classical music and obviously think this is gorgeous. They play it for like babies in the womb and they play it for people studying, and students use it a lot. And so when we're listening to these frequencies that used to be 432 in the key of A, and it would scale up and down from there, it was pleasing to not just our ear, but to our cells. Right. And Beethoven, Mozart, what's important, I think, in the study is that those were in the original keys that were beautiful, not just audibly, but beautiful on a cellular level. Yeah. And so something I love with Soaak itself is that we play the true tones, the true frequencies in the scale that they're meant to impact the human body best, that you see all throughout nature. Yep. And we play them with our guitar tracks and with our music. And so you're getting not just the beautiful effect on your cells, but your mind's able to latch onto it. Yeah. And you're able to kind of co-inhabit that cellular effect with what our CEO, Henry Penix, calls a cellular effect. And so I just think that bridge is really cool. Yeah. And getting back to those basics of the right keys is, I think, a big movement right now.
I think it's definitely fascinating. It's crazy. It's interesting that it changed, right?
I don't know. I mean, we don't want to get into conspiracy theories, but it did definitely change, and that's documented. And so, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's jump into the second study that we have, which is from 2016, so a little bit older. This is in the journal Evidence-Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine. And the the study is Exposure to Music Alters Cell Viability and Cell Motility of Human Non-Auditory Cells in Culture. So again, this is a laboratory environment, right? That's in a culture. We're looking at cells that are not auditory cells. So just like the cancer cells, right? We're looking at cells that aren't meant to perceive sound, which is kind of an underlying theme here today.
Aren't meant to,
quotes, but yet there are still responses that happen to auditory, audible stimulus. So
crazy.
In this study, we have scientists playing 3 types of music. So Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, Mozart's Sonata in D, and Ligeti's Atmospheres to 2 different types of breast cancer cells for 30 minutes each. There was an aggressive type and a not as aggressive type of cancer cells that were used. This one kind of, I think, tees up the first study that we did, right? Because this is older. This is 2016. The first one that we talked about was 2023. We saw the similar things happen here, right? We saw that the cells experienced more cellular death after
100%.
listening to this type of music once again. And so specifically with the non-aggressive, not as aggressive, the MCF7 cells, Beethoven and Ligeti's significantly reduced the viable cell numbers 48 hours after exposure.
So they listened for 30 minutes and 48 hours, 2 days later.
Exactly.
There was still an effect.
Yep.
That's unbelievable.
And that's when you start to see the effect take place as well, right? So it's at that 48 hours mark in between,
So is that when they should be reproducing almost? just
Maybe,
every
right?
so often.
So from this study, it's one of those like, that's interesting. So why, like, what's happening? And this is kind of the underlying theme here of, why it matters, what's interesting, and then also like, what do we need to study next from this 2016 study?
And like you said, it was earlier, absolutely.
What are some of the intracellular functions? Like, what's actually happening to these cells that's causing 48 hours later cellular death?
I have to think it's the interval at which they try to reproduce.
Yeah.
And if they're inhibited for some reason, if they get a healthier tone, or I think a tone that kind of contradicts the aggressive or even less aggressive, but cancer in essence is an aggressive cell.
Yeah.
So if it inhibits that for some reason and gives it almost a new dictate, like a new direction of, we are proliferating healthy cell function. So if you play a frequency, or, in this example, the, Beethoven, the Mozart, if you play that to an unhealthy cell and it's suddenly it's almost like an overwrite, and it hears, I can't now reproduce.
Right.
It makes me think that the first thing in this study is that they shouldn't be able to hear cells. These are non-auditory cells.
Correct.
Not known to have a really visible structure of, almost like a scaffolding that takes in sound, but they're still listening. So it kind of makes me think the larger question is, what are these studies pointing to, and how often do things that we do not think are listening to sound listen? Our environment, things that, we would almost deem inanimate too, but I don't want to go that far. It's more in the human body.
Yeah.
These things are listening, and our words, the frequencies we actually come on board with, seem to be a lot more powerful than
and that kind of brings up, some of the themes of conversations that you and I like to have just in the office, which are, what are we not seeing, right? Like
100%.
Because of, societal norms, because of the way that we were educated, because of, you name it, like, it doesn't matter. We wear these certain hats, right? Or we perceive the world around us through this certain lens.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And that lens really shapes how we can look at things. And here what we're seeing is we've been looking at through a lens, but we're not seeing the full picture.
The whole picture,
right?
yeah.
Like, we're seeing it from one angle, but there's a lot of different sides to this. There's a lot of different angles of this. And so we need to kind of step back and reassess, what is it that we really believe about this? What is it that we truly think about this? And man, there are different pathways that we can take that have really profound effects.
100%. Absolutely. It just takes me back to like grade school, just the stuff you'd call your friend, your brother. I don't even want to say it out loud, but you're stupid, things like that. And it's like, that was such a juvenile thing. But even at that age, we had power. The lens we were given at that time, like 20 years ago, we were not talking about words having this much power.
Right.
I at least don't think it was in the nuclear household. That's something that was talked about by parents, like, careful what you say.
Yeah.
And then you even go back to biblical sources, which we do touch on every now and then, and your words have power, life and death are in the tongue.
Yeah.
And I love when science comes up and studies as recent, 2,025 years after this AD started.
Right.
And it's backing up these things that have been in scripture forever. And it's like, what lens can we grow? What lens can we expand on? And how can we keep things really simple?
Right.
Speak life, play life, like entertain life.
It's the words that you speak. It's the thoughts that you think, right? Like, it's all really important. And in this case also, it's the music that you listen to.
100%. So I thought of the word entertain recently, and I realized the way it's etymologically broken up is attain entry. Entertain. So when you literally entertain something, you're granting it permission to attain entry.
Interesting.
Isn't that wild? And a lot of people think like entertainment is passive, like watching, listening, but it's
so much more than that. And
discerning.
We've seen that through other studies as well, right? And most recently looking at studies of playing video games. And your body does not know the difference between you playing a first-person shooter video game and you actually being in that environment. You're getting hit with the same hormonal responses, the same stress responses.
I feel convicted. Anyone else?
Well, I'm not saying you. I mean, I've been
No,
there
it's
too,
true,
right?
though. Neurologically, you don't know a difference behind what you imagine, what you perceive, and what you were literally mechanically practicing. Like
the stress, the tension, the fear.
Really?
There's a lot of things that are happening to the body. And so we don't need to go down that rabbit trail, but it's really important for us to be mindful. And I think that one of the themes for this podcast and really for our company in general is mindfulness, is being intentional.
100%. Mindset's manifest is like our biggest thing.
Yeah. Being in the present moment. So just really paying attention to what's going on around you, what you're thinking about, what you're talking about, what you're allowing to enter into the
What
environment.
you ruminate on is also big, because sometimes, and for a lot of people listening, this isn't like a fear-mongering thing where we're like, anything you listen to is going to change you quickly. A lot of it depends on what you actually decide to ponder on, you know, what you decide to dwell, what you decide to think about. And again, that's the Bible. Think on this, that those things which are excellent, praiseworthy, of good report, you know, those things. It's another directive that I think is really powerful. But yeah, not to fear-monger and just make you think like, well, I'm at work and there are, you know, songs playing all the time that I can't control. Control your inner state. You know, you also get to drive your frequency. But yeah,
absolutely,
that's definitely continuous studies.
Yeah. So that's we talked about the non-aggressive type. Looking at the aggressive type of the cancer cells, specifically these were the MDA MB231 cells. Again, we saw Beethoven and Mozart. They impeded how the cells could migrate. Right? They lowered the spread. They stopped, or not stopped, but
inhibited spread.
Inhibited the ability of these cancer cells, the aggressive cancer cells, to spread. And also for the aggressive, it shows apoptosis at 24 hours.
For the aggressive
one, cellular death happening even faster. And that's for all three types of music. So that's including Ligeti here as well.
So that means at the 48-hour mark, was that the study that they measured the 48-hour after?
48 hours was the non-aggressive type. And then for the aggressive type, it was 24 hours is where they start to see that, for that to peak.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So kind of why it matters coming out of this study. So what they're saying is music, specific types of music, which, you know, for our company, we say it's frequencies, right?
Absolutely.
It's acoustics, it's auditory, it's vibrations, it's frequencies, are inhibiting cancer cells, making them weaker, less able to spread, and even causing them to have cellular death, like programmatic cellular death 100%. For cancer cells.
And you know, like there are studies that link a high alkaline content in your body, not toxically high, but a higher alkaline content makes it way harder for cancer cells to grow too. And my thought, something we talked about years ago, is you can play frequencies, Mahasaya Moto, I think, in the between the 1960s and 80s, did studies on speaking to water and watching the crystalline structure, the molecular structure change to be more beautiful, clearer, or muddied, and like the cymatics we were talking about earlier, just not a visually pleasing thing to look at, the crystalline structure. And so if we can speak to our water, if we can bless our food, then we can also play these frequencies, the right ketones, 432, not 440, to our water, to our lemon water, if you want to raise your alkaline. And that actually, from the inside out, is doing something with your cells too. Retraining your cells, which and that's it's fascinating.
Two important parts, right? One is this idea of prayer, of speaking over your food, over your water, and having it do a specific job for your body, right?
Yeah.
The other part, though, is the intention of that. And so what I think is interesting is we have these studies that look at water as it crystallizes and music that's been played to it, but then also like words that have been spoken into it. And then you freeze the water, and like you're saying, right, you see different crystal shapes. And so 100%. When it's positive, what we would classify as positive.
You're beautiful,
right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Exactly. Then you're seeing these beautiful structures, these very clear structures.
And really intricate too.
Yeah.
Highly
a better word
intricate.
Than clear. Intricate is the perfect word to describe it. But whenever we use negative words, then that's when you see dysfunctional
asymmetrical, non-patterned, absolutely different structures.
Right. So it would be interesting for me to see, like, does the intention have an impact on that as well? What if...
Is it just phonetic value of the words, or is it intention?
Right, yeah. Or is it a combination of the two? I don't know.
It has to be. And you look at the Petri dishes in these studies here. Again, these are in sterile, closed, clean environments. And just the music is having an effect. And you have to wonder if that was, as Henry says, turbocharged with our will and intent.
Yeah.
What effect is that having? And without even...
Well, it's because it's the belief, right? It's the
Yes, exactly.
And so where I'm going with this is it's the faith component, which I think is this it's this other component that comes in that hard to measure.
Well, it's even like Jesus saying, say to this mountain, move, and it moves. That can't just be a phonetic value, because a lot of people have tried throughout centuries to say to a mountain, move.
There's a faith component that comes in.
There's a faith component that's so charged with your intent and belief.
Is it the faith that does all the work, or is it if I have the faith that I could tell the mountain to move and it would move?
We're getting into non-studied things here.
I agree, but here's kind of turning that thought full circle.
Yeah.
It is a combination of the two, right? Because you just said if you tell the mountain to move, it'll move, right?
Yeah, 100%.
But you also have to have the faith that when you tell it to move, it'll move.
Okay, so here's a thought. So faith of a mustard seed is obviously, don't have to be a scientist to know it's a very small amount. Is that faith, though, the weight of it? Is that tied to something, a deeper reservoir, and does it outweigh the stuff in you that doesn't believe? Is there room in this frequency conversation for when you get your cells to align on a more holistic, optimized level, a better vibration consistently for that specific internal organ, for your whole body, your skin cells, whatsoever have you? Then does that move the obstructions out of the way where you are almost able, like we all know that copper has a high conductivity. And if you start adding other alloys,
Right.
the electric transference slows down. So is the human body something that we can actually continually work on with intent? Optimize with frequency compositions, especially from Soaak, which were created for this. And over time, you actually almost move the non-conductive materials out of your energy field, as Laura talks about your energy body.
Release them.
And on a very scientific level, which I think these are going to keep backing up more and more, you actually become a more conductive being. And your words, your intent, the things you carefully practice have a powerful, measurable effect. And I'd love to see like a Tibetan monk versus Joe Schmo on the street. No offense to Joe Schmo. But them say something to water and literally see if there's a different effect in maybe even somebody practicing mindfulness, sitting still and thinking over the water.
I would be shocked if there wasn't a difference.
There's
because
a
I think
reputable...
the power of the intention and the power of the belief that me speaking to this water is actually going to have an effect.
Exactly that, yeah. 100%. There was a woman who slept and she would have dreams, and she had a water device that would freeze the water. And she found in the morning that the water took on the image of what, like if she dreamed of a dove, she'd see a dove frozen in the water.
Right.
So I think just to latch on the last point, I think there's a measurable difference from just the brain and what's proximity.
Yep.
In proximity.
Absolutely. Jumping back into the studies, this is kind of a nice segue. Our third study here is titled Mind Over Milkshakes. It's one of my favorite studies. It's from 2011. It was in the journal Health Psychology. And so scientists here, what they wanted to do is they wanted to see if what you think about your food changes how you feel.
So exactly what we're talking about.
Specifically, they're not just looking, though, at your actual feelings, writing down, I feel full or I feel hungry. They're actually looking at hormonal changes. They're looking at Grelin, which is the hunger hormone, right? So what they did in this study is they took a group of people, they gave them the exact same milkshake, but they labeled it two different things. They labeled it as a big high-calorie milkshake, so a 620-calorie indulgent milkshake is the language they used.
Indulgent.
Or
Love it.
as a small low-calorie milkshake, a 140-calorie sensible shake. Okay.
Sensible.
Then they did blood tests before, during, and after people drank this milkshake to then look at what is the Grelin response? What is the hunger hormone response? So we have told you something about what you're about to eat. Now, what is your body going to do with that information? You're all getting the exact same food, but you don't know that. You only know what you've been told.
When scientists start messing with milkshakes, no, I'm just kidding. But
a great study.
So what were the results?
I hope that they were good. The important thing that came out of this is that the people who thought that they were having the indulgent shake, a 620-calorie shake, had a large Grelin response, a significant response. So they felt full. They felt fuller longer. They weren't hungry because they had something indulgent. And what they found is that the people that had the 140-calorie shake, they felt hungry. They felt like they had a snack, right? They had a little bit. And the Grelin response changed. It was significantly different. There basically was no change in the Grelin response for the people that had...
No kidding.
That had the 140
So their satiety levels didn't change.
The 140-calorie shake.
So it makes me wonder how much directive you get psychologically on the labeling on foods.
Well, so the labeling is important, but one of the things that I think is really important here, which is going back to our conversation that we were just having about faith and kind of biblical pieces of this, is the blessing of our food, is the prayer over our food, is that idea of what we speak, what we think, what we believe 100%. To be about the things that we consume, and the effect that that has on our body. So I'm not saying that we could go, have ice cream shakes.
Sure, not
all day,
propagating
every day,
but...
and not have a negative response to that. But if we go into that with a positive mindset, that it is fueling our body.
100%.
I think that physiologically our body responds in the way that we go into it, right? So if we have a mindset and attitude of positivity, a mindset of blessing, a mindset of this food is working for me,
absolutely,
then our body is going to react in kind.
I think so. My wife and I have a joke before we eat food. We pray over it, we bless it, but we also say, let this be steak in my system. Let this be steak. And it's like, I'm not kidding. The days that we forget to pray that over, I'm hungrier more often. I'm eating more. I'm snacking more. I don't, I have a habit of eating before bed.
Well, now you know why. It's mind over milkshakes.
Mind over. But that's slogan down, Christian. Mind over milkshakes. Is that the name of the study?
Yeah, that's the name of the study. It's Mind Over Milkshakes. And we are linking all these studies. It'll 100%. Be in the description, so you can look at them as well. We'd love to also, audience, get your feedback on these studies. Tell us what we did wrong.
Yeah, 100%.
We'd love to have your comments. But again, for the Mind Over Milkshakes study, the important thing here is that your mindset changes your physiology. Like, plain and simple.
Man, I wonder how many times in how many decades that's been said, and the people who said it were like disregarded, and then things just keep getting backed up.
Yeah.
At a really quick rate now, I think.
Yeah. What you think about, you bring about. Mindsets manifest.
100%.
It's all the stuff that we say.
100%.
Right? And like, we know these things. We've been taught these things. It's embedded in our religion. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
Are these golden nuggets of like, this is the way to live a best life.
Man, if that's not a, what's the word? Like a golden stamp on reading the Bible. I mean, you dive into that and I've been blown away by how true it is and these correlative studies that come out and it just kind of gives you green lights, green markers on the way. But the thing I have to bounce back to that's really fascinating to me is the cells that are not auditory cells.
Yeah.
So
we're going to dive into that now.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt your thought process there, but this study is really fascinating. It's brand new. It's 3 months old at this point. It's from April of 2025. It's called Acoustic Modulation of Mechano-sensitive genes and adipocyte differentiation. So in this, scientists wanted to see if playing different sounds to cells could change how the cells work and how they grow. Well, this is similar to the first two studies that we started out with, right? We're looking at cells, we're playing sounds to them, and we're seeing what happens. Those were cancer cells. The difference here is that these are fat cells and muscle cells.
Wow.
And specifically, funny enough, they played 3 different types of sound. The first type of sound is 440 hertz.
Boo.
Not 432 hertz, but 440 hertz, which, as we'll see, still has positive attributes. 14,000 hertz is another one. So we have a low frequency, we have a high frequency. I call them low and high. The human body, the human ear, I guess I should be more specific, we can perceive typically around 20 hertz at the lowest end to like 20,000 hertz at the highest end. So here we have 440 hertz, was on the lower end of the range, 14,000 hertz, definitely on the higher end of the range. It changes as we age. Not necessarily important for this study.
Sure.
So we have 440 hertz, 14,000 hertz, and then white noise is the third type of sound that they played.
Which I imagine is literally around 35 hertz because you can almost hear the crackling, something around there, less than 100 for sure, I feel like.
Yeah, I would imagine that the white noise is a combination of a bunch of different hertz, right?
That's true. There are static, steady, quicker tones behind it. Yeah, absolutely.
And so the sounds were played for 2 or for 24 hours, and they were played at... I thought this was interesting, 100 pascals, which is about the same pressure as sounds in your body.
No kidding.
So they actually mimicked, because again, we're doing this, in a controlled environment. We're not doing this inside the body. So they wanted to mimic, what's happening to cells inside the body, as close to inside the body as we can get, right? So they created an environment pascals? That would have the same pressure as inside the body. So... yeah, I interrupted your thought as we jumped into this study. You want to dive back in and tell us kind of what they found and what the important things that came out of the study were?
Definitely. So basically what this study from Masahiro Kumeda out of Japan, and like you said, April of 2025, in Kyoto, they basically found that the cells that are listening, they have these structures around them. So cells, almost like when you have a bone conducting headset, they have these structures that are sensitive to vibration.
Right.
So it's a mechano-sensitive cell. So as we think of hearing, it is really the cells in our ear that are mechano-sensitive. Yeah. And they're taking this sound and putting it into almost like ones and zeros that our brain interprets as different sounds.
Right.
And so, like you said, it's 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, and that kind of drops off as we age, as we're younger. But essentially, they were able to see the response of fat cells and protein cells on these mechanosensitive cells with sound.
Right.
And so they found that what we, I think for a long time, didn't perceive as being able to hear, like the cells in your body, right. They're actually not only hearing, they're speaking, they're kind of sending a sound back as well. That's not talked about as much in the study, but they found that as a side effect almost, they were looking at the protein and the fat cells in the study, but they found that genes were actually turned on and expressed more, or they, some I'm sure weren't affected, but genes that were created to repair cells, to repair organs, these were actually ticked up, and the ones that increased longevity were ticked up. And so you have to wonder how sound is causing us to literally be a healthier being, to age slower, to have better liver repair, spleen repair, stomach gut, things like that. And they found that, what we've been talking about for a long time is true. And this is so recent. This is this year. But this is proof that the sounds we listen to can cause, and I know you're going to get into this too, but cause better, muscle retention, but cause these fat cells to literally not write fat in as much.
Right.
So previously these fat cells would have taken stressors and decided we're going to store this as visceral fat. Yep. And in this, they're almost turned off.
Right.
So we're not going to tell you to get rid of your diet pills, but the fact that sound can do this, and if you play this to your body, you're actually seeing a measurable difference now, is incredible.
Yeah. And that's, I think the fascinating thing here, twofold, is that we have cells that are not associated with the hearing portion of our body, 100%. Right? These are fat cells and muscle cells, and they're not cells when we're looking through a certain lens, right? Mm-hmm. They're cells that we think acoustics,
fat and muscle,
sound, it's not going to have any impact on these types of cells.
Well, we think of them as like movement cells.
Because these cells can't hear anything.
Right.
I think what we forgot to really consider is that sound is a mechanical function, right? So it's a wave function
100%.
that is caused by a mechanical force. And so that's why they did 100 pascals here. That's why the pressure environment was important, is because inside the body, there is a pressure environment 100%. And our cells are getting jostled, are getting bumped and moved, right? And sound is one of the ways that we can move our cells.
They talk about getting your daily movement.
Right. But this comes back to, for me, again, the words you speak, right? This is part of that. As I speak, I can feel, right? My body is producing sound. My body is making a vibration, which is then causing movement inside my body. So if I'm speaking positive things, then I'm creating positive changes inside my body.
Rhythmic, positive, phonetic values that have a sensitivity in our cells mechanically. Right. That's crazy.
And so what we're seeing here is that the mechanosensitivity of our cells responds to sound. So
what we didn't think was listening is always listening.
Everything's listening.
That's crazy. And you think of they literally talk about getting your 60 minutes, getting your 30 minutes of exercise, and you're trying to fuel muscle. You're actually trying to tear muscle to cause it to grow, and you're trying to deplete glycogen cells and sugar cells and carb cells in your system. What they found with these, the ones that increase longevity and increase, DNA repair, gene repair, as well as internal organ repair of those cells, is that the sound is actually causing a stressor on this structure in the cell, the mechanosensitive structure, and that danger, that perceived threat, is actually causing a strengthening of those healthy cells.
Absolutely.
It's a workout for your cells.
And there's plenty of science to back that up as well. You put a plant in the most pristine environment, no wind to blow it over, the perfect amount of light, the perfect amount of water. But when you do that, it has no stressor. You get a plant that wilts. You get a plant that falls over. Because it can't support its own weight, because it never had to support its own weight, right? So,
oh my gosh.
we're made stronger in our stressors.
That's the name of the podcast, Stronger in Our Stressors. That is incredible.
Obviously, there's a limit, right? There's a threshold. You don't want to go too far.
Yeah, no, you don't want to go so far you're debilitated. But
you have to have those ups and those downs. You have to have the mountains, you have to have the peaks, you have to have the valleys.
100%.
Right? Because we learn, we grow, we change, we get better through that. Like
that's amazing. And this whole effort of, you know, living a seamless life, I think it's important, you know, if you, not all of us are lucky enough to say we have easy lives, but to this point, if you have a, you know, relatively easy life, or if you can afford to add in stressors like climbing, you know, going to the gym, playing pickleball, which I know you and your wife do, then you actually build up your resilience. And without resilience, it's like the whole thing, like the plant study. If you raise somebody on the moon or on Mars with, you know, 30% or more gravity reduced, their bones, you know, if they were to return to Earth, they'd be crushed.
Yeah.
And by contrast, the Polynesian islands, the Scandinavian locale, those have like a 0.003 thicker mantle. And so the gravity is just barely stronger. And you literally find that the people there have thicker ankles, denser bones. They go anywhere else on Earth and are crushing people in weightlifting competitions, like strongmen, you know, things like that. And it's just fascinating. But like you said, to a point, you don't want to over debilitate your cells, your body, you know, your mental faculties, anything like that. But it is amazing that the thing a lot of people run from is what creates endurance and strength, and even cellularly.
I think that any person that you go to is going to have their own stressors, right? Like you cannot escape it, so embrace it. And that's where I think the hat comes on of like, put on the positivity hat. Like look at your stressors as a great thing, because you're going to experience them no matter where you're at in life.
What if you had the mindset of having gratitude for your stressors, like we talk about the food and the cellular changes in your body? What would happen if you literally thanked the adversity in your life for strengthening?
And I think that question, like that thought, is how you truly live in joy. And I think that that's something that's, you know, it's not talked about enough, because if you think about somebody who's happy, and then you think about somebody who's joyful,
it's deeper.
There's something else to that, right? Like joy is such a stronger emotion.
It's resilient
happy,
itself,
right? Like, and so I want to choose to be the person who's joyful 100%. In everything that they do, in every experience, than just someone who's happy.
And then what does that do? I know we keep taking this on tangents, but if you were the one person, let's take 10 people in a room and 9 people are not having a good day, and they are able to be swayed by the ebbs and flows of life. So they get a good paycheck, they get you know, some kind of windfall of blessing, and their positivity shoots through the roof. And then when something befalls them that's negative, they plummet. Their self-talk plummets. How they view their incident, their circumstance, just totally is degraded. Versus the one person in the room who decides, through the feast, through the famine, the ebbs and the flows, I'm going to be steady state in gratitude. Does that person, if the others are any bit receptive, does that person have an effect on the frequency of everyone around them? And if you decide to have a North Star, decide to have something that does not change, that is continually positive, does that orienting force affect you and your people and your family and your business and your body to decide, I'm going to continually be in the state of gratitude?
Yeah.
And does that raise the frequency of everything within and outside you, you know?
100% yes. And again, I think that I sound like a broken record, brings back one of the important parts of religion also, right? And giving you that North Star example of a place for community, which we know is important. If you look at blue zones, places where people live to be 100 more so than anywhere else. Centurion areas, right? The blue zones. One of the really important components of that is community, right? Having your community. Another important part of that is exercise. So a lot of blue zones are in areas where people are climbing stairs, which is physically taxing, but also when you're climbing stairs, you're using muscles in your legs and also and other parts of your body that are important for balance.
Coordination.
So when you're sitting down, standing up, sitting down, standing up, you're improving your balance.
Wow.
Which is reducing falls, which later in life has a really strong impact on longevity.
That's incredible.
So
man, there's a lot, but even like the balances in the ear and their mechanosensitive organs and cells
so
there.
as you go up and up,
as you go up and up and down, you're changing altitude too.
Yep.
But when you do that, like you are literally training cross hemispheric bifurcated transitions in the brain to control left, right side of the body. So you have coordination, you have balance, you have the hormones that are released when your knees are compressed versus expanded.
And then you have the stressors as well, just like
you literally get the
About.
stressors.
Yeah.
And the community, it's amazing. Like we look at these petris and cell dishes, and you know that if you leave one cell alone in a dish, there's 100%, without saline or sugars as well, it will die.
Yeah.
But humans are relational. We're almost like the bigger macro version of a cell structure where we need people, we need other cells to cohabitate. You have to have a community, with.
You have to have purpose.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I think we should lean on each other and become, I think if there's one thing here, it's like, a thing here is walk in gratitude. Decide to, you get to be the decisive faculty that covers your circumstance, your body, your food, but then also be receptive. And if there's a higher frequency or a higher way of tuning yourself available, whether that's in your studying, your circles, the things you speak of yourself, the Soaak compositions you listen to, decide that you're going to implement that and be receptive to the positivity, because it could rewire the way that you structure your lens over circumstances and events. Yeah. All the way down to the gene expression in your body.
Exactly. And so that's here in this study by these specific frequencies, right? 440 hertz, 14,000 hertz, and white noise played for 2 hours or for 24 hours. They did it both ways. There were 145 different genes that they found that were turned on or turned off. Like there is a genetic response that's happening to acoustics, to vibration, to frequency.
Through it. That's crazy.
It's amazing. And one of the things that you mentioned, and I'll touch on as well, is that the sound stopped fat cells from fully growing into fat storing cells. So these were cells that would turn into cells that are going to be visceral fat, right? Yeah. Which is an unhealthy fat. It's
flooded with oils.
It's not a type of fat that you want to have in your body. The lower visceral fat, the better. You want, obviously a little bit helps protect your organs, but
brown fat cells also are really important, and I don't think it affects those negatively.
But what we saw here is that listening to these sounds prevented those types of fat cells from storing fat. It stopped them from maturing.
Almost like it did with the cancer cells. It inhibited the growth and proliferation of those.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
And so I think it's fascinating. I think it has to do with obviously the environment that you put yourself in, right? Like this was an environment where these different frequencies were playing, but I think the environment can also expand to be the environment of what you are speaking every day, of what you are thinking every day.
What are you entertaining?
Of what you're, what was the name of the study of Mind Over Milkshakes? Of what you think about the things that you're eating every day. 100%. It has an impact. And, it's not something to just be dismissed. I think it's something that we need to be more intentional. We need to be more present, and we need to have a positivity in that presence, right? So be aware of it, be mindful of it, but then bring with it the power of positivity and that it's impacting me for good, 100%. Impacting those around me for good.
And one note to add on to that, and that's incredibly powerful. In one of these studies, they talked about these particular ovarian cancer cells. And the first time they played these frequencies, or the classical music, Turkish ney and the Western classical music to these cells, they actually saw that the cancer cells started to grow. During the second time, or when they continued to play these, that's when they saw the cytotoxic and cytostatic, so the inhibition and the movement, programmed cell death of these cells. Yep. And so one of my takeaways from this as well is it's not a one-stop shop. We don't bless our food one time, we eat.
Right.
When it comes to, your entertainment, what you speak, what you say, what you think of the food you eat, what you think of your body, even saying like waking up in the morning and, for example, saying like, I feel fat again, versus saying I am lean, I am strong, I am insert what you want to be here. You program yourself, you program your attitude with habitual action. So one of the things I want to mention is in each of these studies, they talked about, and you can check this out. I believe it's each of the studies. They talk about the habitual playing of these frequencies or this music. And I think that's really important is they didn't just do this once. This mouse study in the last one out of Japan was for 2 hours or 24 hours. So I think playing the sound frequency compositions from Soaak is taking a lot of the guesswork out. If you do that with music, like, some of these studies talk about, we have a nature and a music track as well. So you click your frequency, you click sound options, and click music, and that brings your decisive faculty. It makes it more pleasant to the ear, and it allows your cells to soak that in more. And if you do that daily along any of the 30 frequencies we have that are easily accessible, you find that you train that habit over time, and your cells begin to expect to operate better. And I think that's really big. I don't listen to Soaak. I've been with Soaak for 6 years. I don't listen once a day, once a month. I'm listening every day. I use Sleep Well every night. And I have to thank that for a lot of the improvements. But that habit over time builds your gratitude. When you're deciding I'm going to do a healthy thing for my body, I think it builds your ability to look through a different lens and change your neurochemistry, which is maybe something we'll get into another time, how the brain is neuroplastic and it can be changed. But I just had to say that, the habits you build over a long period of time do a lot.
Create a positive routine and view everything that you're doing with that positive mindset, that positive intention.
That joy. Let's build that joy.
Yeah. Let's spread joy. I think that wraps it for today's episode.
I think so.
Thanks for joining us.
That was awesome. Absolutely.
We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to The Science of Sound with Aaron Fournier. If you found today's conversation insightful, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. For more resources on frequency-based wellness, follow along at Soaak Podcast. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and stay in tune with the science of sound.